Mist rolled over the Himalayan cliffs like ghosts returning home. Beneath a gray dawn, Monk Tenzin sat cross-legged before 1,000 flickering butter lamps, his laughter echoing through the stone courtyard. The mountains seemed to listen. "Have you ever laughed in the face of fear?" His voice whispered to the wind. "Have you ever smiled when death came calling?" A sudden roar shattered the silence, a landslide tearing through the valley. As monks fled, Tenzin stood still, robes whipping in the wind, his smile unbroken. Stones thundered down, dust swallowed light, and yet he bowed gently, as if greeting an old friend. But far below, a faint cry pierced the chaos, a child's cry. His laughter stilled. For the first time, his calm wavered. Silence settled after the mountain's roar. Smoke curled from shattered stones. Tenzin moved down the narrow path alone, following the faint cry echoing through the valley. His heart, once untouched by fear, now raced with something unfamiliar. Concern. He found the wreckage of a small hut, a wooden cradle half buried beneath rubble. Inside lay a tiny girl, covered in dust but alive, her eyes bright with terror and innocence. As he lifted her, the world seemed to pause. The monk who once laughed at death now held life itself trembling in his arms. That night, within the candlelit monastery hall, Tenzin sat beside the sleeping child. Her breathing steadied, and for the first time in years, he felt warmth, not from the fire, but from her presence. "Even the smallest flame," he whispered, "defies the dark." Abbot Dorje entered quietly, studying him. "You've brought the storm into your heart, Tenzin." The monk smiled faintly. Perhaps the heart was waiting for the storm. Days passed. Mira awoke, frightened by silence, yet drawn to the monk's laughter echoing in the courtyard. He taught her to breathe, to smile at the sky, to listen to wind. In her company, the monastery felt alive again. The monks whispered that Tenzin had changed, but none could deny that the sound of his laughter now carried a new softness, a new meaning. One evening, as stars shimmered over the monastery, Tenzin watched Mira chasing fireflies. The abbot joined him, arms folded. "You found joy again," he said. "And risk," replied Tenzin softly. The abbot smiled. "Both are the same path." Tenzin's gaze lingered on the child's laughter, pure, alive, unstoppable. Deep inside, he felt something shift. A seed of love that would one day test every vow he'd ever made. Seasons turned across the Himalayas. Snow melted into rivers that sang through valleys, and laughter once again filled the monastery's cold walls. Mira grew under Tenzin's quiet guidance, her innocence becoming his new meditation. He taught her the art of silence. She taught him the art of wonder. One morning, as sunlight poured over the peaks, she asked, "Master, why do you laugh at death?" He smiled. "Because death has never met you." For a moment, even the winds seemed to pause, listening to a bond the mountains themselves would remember. Life within the monastery became a rhythm of laughter, chores, and quiet prayer. Tenzin found himself smiling at her questions, each one a mirror reflecting what had forgotten to feel. When she offered him a wild flower and said, "Even this tiny thing wants to live," his heart softened. It was then he realized he was no longer laughing at death. He was laughing with life. Years slipped quietly, like prayer beads through his fingers. The monks whispered that Tenzin's laughter had changed, less defiant, more tender. Abbot Dorje watched from afar, a knowing smile beneath his beard. "Love will teach him what death could not," he murmured. As evening bells echoed through the valley, Tenzin realized how deeply his peace now depended on the sound of Mira's laughter. Winter returned with quiet grace. Snow fell upon the monastery like white silence. Mira practiced meditation in the frozen courtyard, while Tenzin watched, realizing she had begun to reflect his teachings, perhaps even surpass them. When her eyes opened, calm and steady, he saw not a child, but a soul that mirrored his own. A trace of fear brushed his heart, as though the mountains whispered, "She will not stay forever." On the Festival of Lanterns, the entire valley gathered below to honor life and death as one. Tenzin and Mira released a paper lantern together. As it floated upward, she whispered, "Master, do you ever wish you could keep something forever?" He looked at her, the glow painting her face golden, and said, "Perhaps forever isn't about keeping, but remembering." Yet, as he watched the lantern fade into the stars, a quiet ache lingered in his chest. For the first time, he wished for time to stand still. Years folded into the mountain's silence. Mira was no longer the child of the storm, but a young woman whose laughter carried wisdom. Tenzin, now older, found peace in her presence yet feared it too. One morning by the river she asked, "Master, what happens to love when we die?" He gazed at the flowing water, voice soft. "It becomes the river." But even as he said it, something within him trembled. Love had become his prayer, and he did not know if he was ready to lose it. Spring painted the monastery in colors of rebirth. Mira tended the garden, her laughter echoing like birdsong while Tenzin watched from afar. The monks whispered, "He loves her as a father, a teacher, perhaps more." He ignored them, but in solitude he prayed for strength. He had taught her to face life without fear. Yet now, it was he who feared losing her light. That evening, as the mountains blushed under sunset, Mira joined Tenzin for tea. "You always say death is not the end," she said softly. "Then why do you fear it now?" He paused, hand trembling slightly. "Because," he whispered, "this time death would not take me. It would take what I love." The silence between them was heavier than any prayer. The next morning, Abbot Dorje summoned Tenzin. "You have taught well," he said, "but your heart trembles now. Love, when hidden, becomes suffering." Tenzin bowed in silence, his face unreadable. Outside, Mira stood by the prayer wall, unaware. For the first time, Tenzin felt torn between heaven and earth, between the vow he had kept and the love he could no longer deny. That night, wind howled through the valley. Tenzin sat alone before the great bell, its bronze surface reflecting flickering lamplight. He thought of every moment, the laughter, the silence, the lessons. "Can love exist without holding?" he whispered to the dark. A voice within answered, "No, but it can exist without fear." Outside, Mira placed a single flower at the temple gate, her gesture unseen yet felt. Two souls, bound by love unspoken, stood on opposite sides of the same prayer. The year the sickness came, even the mountains seemed to hold their breath. A strange fever spread through the valley, stealing color from faces and laughter from hearts. Tenzin walked among the sick, fearless as ever, tending to them with calm hands and steady prayer. "Death is only a doorway," he reminded them. But when he found Mira among the coughing, her face pale, eyes dimmed, his breath faltered. For the first time, the doorway looked like a wall he could not walk through. Inside the monastery, the smell of herbs and incense mixed with fear. Tenzin crushed roots and whispered mantras, his hands trembling slightly. Mira lay on a mat nearby, her breath shallow but peaceful. "Do not fear," he said. Though his voice betrayed him, she smiled faintly. "Master, you always said death is kind." He closed his eyes. "Yes, but kindness still hurts." Days turned into nights without end. Tenzin forgot to eat, forgot to rest. He sat beside Mira, chanting, holding her hand when fevers came. "Let go," whispered Abbot Dorje. "You cannot bargain with impermanence." But Tenzin shook his head. "She is not impermanent to me. His laughter, Once his armor was gone. Only silence answered the storm inside him. That night, when all others slept, Tenzin climbed the northern path toward the cliffs. The storm raged, lightning slicing the sky. Legends spoke of a blue flower that bloomed only where death lingered, a cure for the uncurable. Barefoot and bleeding, he climbed higher, whispering Mira's name with each step. His vows echoed in the wind, breaking one by one. "Let me save her," he prayed, "and I will laugh no more." As dawn broke, Tenzin reached the summit. Snow swirled like ash, and there it was, the blue flower blooming through the frost, glowing faintly as if alive. He fell to his knees, whispering, "You were right, Mira. Even this tiny thing wants to live." His hands trembled as he plucked it, but before he could rise, the wind howled again. The mountain roared beneath him, and the ground gave way. The monk who once laughed at death now stood face to face with it, and smiled through tears. Snow fell like whispers of forgotten prayers. Tenzin descended the mountain, clutching the blue flower close to his chest. Each step was agony, but his heart carried her name with every breath. "Not yet," he murmured to the wind. His bare feet bled across the ice, yet his mind burned brighter than the storm. He no longer feared death. He feared only not reaching her in time. Hours later, the monastery appeared through the storm like a fading dream. The gates creaked open as Abbot Dorji rushed out, his voice breaking. Tenzin collapsed into his arms, the flower still clenched in frozen fingers. "Give it to her," he gasped. The abbot's eyes widened. "You climbed the mountain of death itself." Tenzin smiled weakly. "Then let death rest. I've already met him." Inside the silent monastery, Tenzin lay weak beside Mira's resting place. The abbot brewed the petals into a steaming potion. Its scent faintly sweet. When the liquid touched her lips, color returned to her cheeks. She stirred, whispering, "Master." His eyes filled with tears. "Sleep now," he said, voice breaking. For the first time, his laughter was gone, but his heart was whole. When Mira opened her eyes fully, the snow outside had stopped. She reached for Tenzin's hand. Cold, still, yet steady. "You saved me," she whispered. His faint smile answered, "No, little one, you saved me first." His breathing slowed, each exhale a farewell wrapped in peace. "Master," she said, tears falling, "you can't leave." His eyes flickered open one last time. "I'm not leaving. I'm just becoming the laughter that stays." That night, the bell tolled once. Abbot Dorje stood by the window, eyes lifted to the stars. Mira knelt beside Tenzin's still form, his prayer beads wrapped in her fingers. Outside, the storm broke, revealing a clear sky filled with silver light, and from somewhere beyond, a faint echo of laughter drifted through the wind, not defiant this time, but free. Even death could not quiet it. Snow fell in perfect silence, blanketing the monastery like a shroud of peace. Mira sat beside Tenzin's still body, refusing to move. She closed her eyes and prayed, her tears mixing with the melting frost. Somewhere beyond sight, Tenzin stirred, not in flesh, but in spirit. He stood on an endless field of snow where the wind sang with familiar laughter. "Is this death?" he wondered. "Or the beginning of something I never understood?" He walked toward the figure through the whispering wind. It spoke without words, its voice like his own. "You laughed at me once," it said. "Why do you not laugh now?" Tenzin bowed deeply. "Because I understand you now. You are not my end. You are my teacher." The wind softened, and for the first time, death smiled. Visions filled the air like drifting memories. Mira's laughter, Abbot Dorje's prayers, the flutter of prayer flags. Death asked, "If you could return, would you still choose love?" Tenzin looked to the horizon where golden light broke through clouds. "Ice," he said, "for love taught me what even death could not, that laughter is not escape, but acceptance." The world trembled softly, as if bowing to truth. "Then go," said death, its voice tender. "The ones who love you will not remember your face, they will remember your laughter." Tenzin closed his eyes, the wind rising gently around him. He felt weight dissolve, not into nothing, but into everything. His laughter echoed through the snow, soft, free, eternal. Somewhere far below, Mira lifted her head, smiling through tears as if she'd heard him. As dawn broke over the real world, Mira awoke from her vigil. The sky was clear, the storm gone. When she stepped outside, the air shimmered with warmth. On the stone beside her lay Tenzin's prayer beads, glowing faintly blue. A soft laugh echoed through the valley. She pressed the beads to her heart and whispered, "Then laugh with me always." The wind answered, carrying peace. Seasons changed again, but this time, the monastery didn't feel lonely. Mira walked the stone halls where Tenzin's laughter once rang, and the silence now sounded like peace. The monks spoke of the man who had laughed at death and learned to love. She smiled, teaching the children what he once taught her: how to breathe, how to listen, and how to smile even when the wind turned cold. And in her voice, his laughter lived on. One evening, Mira climbed to the monastery roof where she once watched lanterns rise. She whispered into the wind, "Master, I still hear you." The air shimmered with a low, familiar laugh that made her heart tremble, not with sadness, but gratitude. The setting sun painted the snow in colors only love could make. In time, Mira became a teacher, her laughter softer but stronger. Pilgrims came from far valleys, seeking the monk who laughed at death. She told them, "He is everywhere you dare to love without fear." Beneath her words, the sound of wind through prayer flags carried a deeper message, one no language could hold, but every heart could feel. Years later, the valley held a festival in honor of Tenzin. Hundreds of lanterns rose into the night, just as they once had. Mira stood among them, older now, her hair streaked with silver, her laughter the same as his. When she released her lantern, she whispered, "We let go, but we never lose." And as the light ascended, the valley echoed with laughter that sounded like two souls reunited. Long after her passing, travelers still visited the monastery, saying they could hear laughter in the wind. Some said it was Tenzin, others said it was Mira. But the monks knew the truth. It was love itself, echoing through time. On the mountain cliffs where their stories began, a single blue flower bloomed every spring. And when the wind touched it, it sounded like laughter, gentle, endless, alive.